This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not reflect the opinions of the parent network or any of its other entities. They might not even reflect the opinions of the podcast host. The truth is out there. Here, we're just talking about things. Do your own research.
The jack of hearts will break me. Makes me feel like Judas, baby. Does he ever look through your mind?
All right. Good evening, morning, whatever time of day it is for you. Welcome to the Blurred Lines podcast. So glad you guys are here. And I first and foremost want to say the opinions and views absolutely do reflect the host's opinions and views. All right. I'm tired of hiding behind stuff. It's ridiculous. I believe all the crap that comes out in this. Well, not all of it, but I say like 99% of the stuff that we talk about. Okay. So having said that, we've got a very cool cast tonight. And before I introduce my special guest, I want to give a shout out to msh.com. That's meetsohorny.com. My boy Ryan Babb at Black Label Chronometers and Redemption Cannabis. All right, so sponsor stuff's out of the way. I'd like to welcome my special guest who I've been on tons of podcasts with, but Jukebox, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks for doing this, man. I'm good. This is, we were going to do a Singed episode, but you and I have discussed doing H.H. Holmes, and I think there's a lot to dive into. And I think it's only fair to the listeners that we have a bit more information, because I think it's either going to be a 2-part show or a very long episode, one of the two, because there's, you got the World Fair, and there's just so much behind that topic that I think we could really dive into.
Well, you say possibly 2-part episode, but here's the thing, dude. You've got the World Fair element. You've got his crazy Rube Goldberg experiment murder hotel that he created. And to just gloss over that crazy 1980s mousetrap board game insanity, you can't just gloss over that thing, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the Jack the Ripper connection too.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, this is multi-layered. They did a whole docu-series on, I think it was the History Channel, where the descendant of H.H. Holmes tried to figure out if he was related to Jack the Ripper. I mean, like, it was a whole thing. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, there's a ton. And if we don't do the proper amount of research, we're gonna miss something. And for people that have never been introduced to the subject matter before, I think it behooves us to do our research beforehand. But that's neither here nor there, because we've got an out of this world subject to talk about tonight. And we are going to be talking about the conspiracies that surround Mars, but that we're talking about that to introduce something that I think is very cool. But I'm going to let you talk about that because you've got all the 411 download for the folks.
And I think that, this is your show. So the conspiracy aspect of it will be a huge part of this, because you're going to know more on that topic than I will. What I do know is recently I was listening to one of my other podcasts I listened to, and then someone mentioned Elon Musk and colonizing Mars. So I was like, oh man, I haven't really looked into that. So I started kind of looking into Elon Musk and Baz Lansdorp. I can't ever pronounce his name right. They're the two guys that are trying to colonize Mars right now, and they believe we can do it. Now, there's obviously theories that we never have. Do I believe that we have? Honestly, I don't know. I think that there's evidence out there that we haven't. But, the idea of what we're going to be talking about towards the end of this is a fictional TV series. So with that being said, I've researched the information that I do know is being studied to get humans on Mars. And I'm kind of creating this audio dramedy, which is a whole new aspect for JG's Lounge. But there's a lot to it, because I want to capture the listener's attention And if they're not viewing it, I want the intensity to be felt in the characters and the cast. But we can kind of talk about that towards the end of the show.
Okay. Well, a quick question about that. You say audio dramedy, so I'm picturing is it almost like a Garrison Keillor, Lake Wobegon type, stage play where everybody has different parts? Is it going to be ad-libbed, or is it going to be scripted where it's like, this is your part, this is your part, and this is your part, and then you read them and put your own inflection and things into it?
So we're going to utilize Messenger, and for each episode that I have a guest on, first off, they're going to have a mic. The audio quality has to be good, so they're going to have a mic so we can capture that clarity, because you can talk about some ambient noises, some special effect noises to kind of enhance it. And but no, they're going to be slightly improv, slightly scripted, in the sense that we'll have a little group chat where we kind of go over the topics that we want to discuss. We're going to be off the wall about it because none of us are experts on the topic, which is going to make it comical. Again, these are some things we can talk about later, but I want the person that's going to be a voice on this to feel comfortable just getting out of their comfort, or being comfortable and just having fun, and creating a colony experience for everybody to listen to and enjoy. And you know me, I'm comical, but I like to also be serious when I can be. So we're going to try and blend a little bit of all of it.
Okay. I like the concept, especially with the subject matter that you're talking about, because one of my favorite movies within the last decade was off of a book, The Martian, with Matt Damon.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that wrote that book, if you read any of his work, he's got a very a finely tuned sense of humor. It's a bit wry, and sometimes it's dry in spots, but then other times it's very sarcastic. And have you seen that movie?
Yes, I've seen it like twice.
Okay, yeah. So like there's a lot of humor that's intertwined, but it's also it's very serious. And there were moments in that movie that were incredibly serious. Where you're on the edge of your seat. So I love the idea behind this, and we can definitely talk more about it. But since this is Blurred Lines and it is a conspiracy podcast, and we're talking about going to Mars, first and foremost, let's talk about the fact that folks actually think that we've been to the moon.
Right.
And, things don't add up. We've done this on the podcast before. We've talked about this, no blast, not cone, but
craters.
Blast craters underneath the landers. You're talking 10,000 pounds of thrust coming down onto, fine, powder. It should have, they were worried about how the lander was going to stay upright because they didn't know if the feet were going to be able to, find purchase in the soil, on the walls of the crater. Right. So that's one thing. Here's another thing. I found this completely odd, that when they were wanting to do the Apollo movie, was it Ron Howard went to NASA and said, "Hey guys, I sure would like it if you guys would be swell and turned over all the telemetry data and all the things, from the moon landing mission, because I want this to be as accurate as possible." And NASA, much like John Lovitz in Saturday Night Live fashion, went, "Yeah, telemetry data. That's it. That's the ticket. Just give us a couple days." Ron Howard, being the trusty little Opie-esque figure that he is, goes away, comes back a couple days later, and oops, it's gone. Just lost it.
Don't know where it went. Sorry.
No. And the folks from NASA will literally tell you, "We lost it. We don't know what happened to it." What, all this amazing data and things that got you to the moon, you just happened to, some guy kicked a fucking cord out of a wall while it was sweeping up the corridor like Goodwill Hunting, and the next thing you know, the fucking data's gone. We just lost it. Sorry, folks.
We're a multi-billion-dollar company, but just sorry. Don't know what to tell you.
Some of the most important data that's ever been collected by humankind, right? Just gone.
Right.
So there's that. But
Well, there's also, I mean, there's a lot of there's tons of areas on Earth where the landscape is very similar and could easily be staged. Like there's just we can't deny that.
you don't say. Well, isn't that funny? Because one thing that our boys and gals at NASA got caught with, and I think it is NASA, like, to the word in I think Hebrew or something like that, means deception or some shit. It's like very strange. But they got caught red-handed, pun intended, reading up all of the pictures from Mars. And when the whistleblower called them out on their bullshit, they came back and like, well, the pictures actually look like this. And people are like, that looks strangely like an atmosphere. And they're like, no, that's just how it looks up there. Okay, fuckers. And so they got caught with that. That's a fact. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. Okay.
Right. I actually am. It says it means to lead. The Hebrew word nasha means to lead astray, delude, beguile, deceive, or seduce.
Oh, look at that. The conspiracy theory guy was right again on a foreign language. How weird. So anyway, so they got caught red-handed with that, and among all the many other lies that they perpetrate. But to your point, okay, and this is one of the things that they've been getting caught on repeatedly, is there are landscapes in Utah, in overseas, in like Siberia and other places, up in Iceland, all right, where they will have a picture of the Mars surface, right? And then somebody with Google Maps, they don't even have to like actually go there. They can just use Google Maps. This is how simple they think the public is.
Right.
That something as simple as Google Maps for us to check something, or Google Earth, Google Earth. So they will take Google Earth and they will find the same exact location, put it side by side, and it's not even like, oh, guys, it just kind of looks similar. It's like, no, the number of rocks, the way that they are sitting on the surface, everything is exactly the same. Yet this is in Iceland. This is on Mars.
Right.
The only difference is this picture, you have a rover there.
Right.
And so, you know, there's so many questionable things like that. But then, you know, it's like, what direction of conspiracy do you want to go for at this point?
Well, you mentioned like the photos and stuff. I know they've talked about how images from, you know, a decade ago compared to images now, and how the planet really hasn't adjusted at all, which doesn't make any sense, and almost looks identical. So it's like, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of things that it's like, do you and I know for sure? No, but I mean, the evidence is there.
Well, it's okay. So there's this concept in philosophy, and it's used elsewhere, called A, therefore B. If A is true, therefore B must be true, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so you're talking about a planet that, if we buy into what scientists are telling us about Earth, all right, let's just start there. We are traveling around the sun at roughly 66,600 miles per hour. And you'll notice with a lot of these numbers, the 666 pops up over and over and over and over again, which is creepy as fuck.
It really is.
But so we're traveling, you know, through space around the sun at that speed. We're spinning at roughly 1,000 miles an hour, you know, give or take some change. All right. So we're spinning, right? You know, like a globetrotter spinning a ball. Right? Earth is a spinning. It's a spinning. And then we're also going around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour. Not to mention that the sun, according to scientists, it's not stagnant. It's not just sitting fixed in one place. It is actually moving through space, right, on a path. So the solar system, and they have models of this, where the sun is flying through space and the solar system, the planets are falling behind it in a spiral. It looks like if you took a pair of nunchucks and tossed it and they were flying like this,
Yes.
and around in, that's what that looks like. So and I say all that to bolster your point of, if you have this planet Mars, even if there's no atmosphere, all right, I'll give them that. Let's say there's no atmosphere to move stuff around, for there not to be storms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Still, the fact that this planet is moving at that rate of speed, with it must be spinning, and it's going around the sun, and it's going through space, spinning like this, and not one pebble has moved in a decade. The
Right.
fuck you say, sir?
It makes no sense. It doesn't add up. It doesn't. It's like somebody just sat there and goes, this number looks pretty. I'm just going to say this.
Well, yeah. Well, here's the thing. It's NASA is, I'm not saying the people there aren't smart. Okay. But the thing that they have discounted is that folks like you out in the world, folks like me out in the world that do our own research, that are educated, that look at things and question things, don't just buy all the bullshit that they're feeding us. But their hubris is so great that they're just like, well, we'll just wrap some fancy language around it and it'll be fine. An example. All right. And they always fuck up. That's the thing. They always fuck up. I give you a good example. The hair, the female astronaut hair. Have you seen the ridiculousness?
I can't say I have.
Oh, bro, look it up. It is the most ridiculous thing. First of all, in a weightless environment, all right, hair isn't just going to stick straight up. It will flow like this, right? Like seaweed in a riverbed, all right? It would be going like this. But if you look, they have their hair sprayed up like this, and it's just like people that had mohawks, all right, back in the 80s during the punk craze, and they would move, and when hair is hairsprayed and it is flopping back and forth. Yeah, see?
Yeah.
There you go.
And
when they move, if you can play that, when they move, it literally moves around like heavily sprayed hair.
let me see if I can find something on it.
Yeah, and they try to pass it off as, oh, we're in space.
Let's see here. Astronaut hair.
Another example, and I don't think it was the Koreans, I think it was the Chinese, that they were up in space, and they're like, oh, look at us, we're up in space. There's 3 of us hanging out here in the cabin of the space capsule.
Yeah, look, it's not moving. It looks like it easily could have been straightened into that position and just gelled.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
It's not free flowing.
See how when she moved forward?
Yeah.
It's not free flowing. It literally slumps back like it has fucking been sprayed.
Yep.
And crazy. There's another one where these Asian astronauts are, there's 3 of them side by side, and they're like, oh, we're up here and everything's great and we're so happy to be in space. There's literally a fucking glass of water sitting on a table right next to the guy on the left, just sitting there. And they're floating, right? They're floating.
Yeah.
It is, but it's this hubris that and you see, it is the same kind of sanctimonious academic hubris that comes from, especially when we saw with the whole election thing that just happened, like, we're educated, you're stupid, sit down, shut up. You will take whatever we feed you. And folks, just so you know, right now I'm getting my PhD. I've got a 4.0. My master's I got from an Ivy League plus university, graduated with a 4.0 GPA. Don't fuck with me. All right. I'm just as educated as any of these fucking goons that are out here. It's just I don't buy into the bullshit. All right.
Right.
So it's the hubris that comes with I'm educated by this institution, so I am therefore smarter. So they feel like everything that we push off on you, you'll just buy, and to some degree. And I'll ask you to speak on this. From the 60s to the 70s to the 80s to the 90s and a little bit of the 2000s, we were pretty much asleep, right? We had our big budget movies, we had our football, we had all this stuff, but there's been this awakening that has been happening, and people are starting to see through the veil.
Right. I agree. There's an episode I had on a while back with a flat earther, and I don't believe that the world is flat necessarily, but there are some points that they. I don't.
I got something for you, but keep going.
But he talked about how he's like the only reason he said something about the only reason that you know that the Earth is round is because you were told it, and I'm like, there's some point behind that. Like I've been in a plane a few times. I'm pretty sure I've seen curves, but like how much of it and like stuff like that. If you really start thinking about it, there's a lot that we're just told, and we're just like, oh, okay. And you don't think about it until somebody says something like that. Like somebody put a globe in your hand and said, this is Earth. And then that's the way you were raised, but you don't necessarily know that's true. Like we don't, yeah, they've got pictures, but a picture in a video doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it really looks like.
Well, as an example, all right, not to in this flat earth thing leads into the firmament, which is something I was going to talk about with the space travel shit.
Yeah.
With the curvature of the earth, if we believe what the scientists tell us, for every, I think it's mile, there's supposed to be an appreciable drop of like 16 feet, right? As it goes like this. If that were true, then when you're standing in St. Joe, Michigan on the beach, Silver Beach, all right, I'll even nail it down for you, specific location, Silver Beach, right by the bathrooms. On a clear day, when there's not a lot of interference from haze and everything else, you can see Chicago. If the curvature of the earth were true, you would not be able to see Chicago because it would be dropped down past the point where you can see it.
Yeah,
behind the horizon. Well, what they try to say is like, well, no, that's reflections off the atmosphere, and you can see the reflect. It's like, no, I'm literally looking at it. Like I'm literally fucking looking at it. Okay, right. So don't try to pull your bullshit. I can see the motherfucker. Okay. But here's another thing that I just saw yesterday, and the point, it's a bit silly because I think the physics might be off, but when the guy brought it up, it made me go, all right, this is making my brain hurt. Right. If the earth is spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, whatever it is, the number that they've put to it, he said, what is the point of flight? Like literally, if the fastest our jets can go commercially is anywhere from like 250 to 400 miles per hour, like why don't you just have basically like a Harrier where it goes up and it just fucking hangs tight for a minute? Earth is spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, bro. So it should just be like, I'm over here in Europe, boop, 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 boop. You're in New York, twice as fast.
More than that.
So, I mean, like, I sat there and thought about it, and I was like, well, shit.
Like, to think that we're spinning that fast that it looks like we're going that slow, it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. Like, they throw in a bunch of fancy words that make you think, oh, well, they sound smart. They must be right.
Oh, exactly. Well, when you use fancy words, you word salad somebody to death, like, oh, well, if you're going to, use this kind of invective speech where you're dropping pejoratives into the narrative, this discourse must stop. That sounds fancy. And actually, the thing I said made sense. But you know what? It's just a bunch of bullshit.
Right.
Because literally what I said was stop saying mean things and being an asshole, or we're going to have to stop talking. All right.
Right. Yep.
But they use these words and, all of this great, sounding speech and these technical terms to basically, layer it over people that, they're not dumb. They just want to get up, go to their job, take care of their family, drink their beer, watch their fake ass football that's scripted. And we know that it's scripted now because the
Right.
NFL's an entertainment organization. That's not bullshit.
Right.
Right. They want to watch their football and just chill out. If they really sat down to talk about it and think about it and like really dove into it, I would say a good portion of the people would be able to figure out the bullshit. But because, and you just said this,
Mhm.
we were told this is an authority. We were told trust them.
Mhm.
So we do.
Yep. It's ridiculous, man. Do you remember the first video where there's an astronaut like floating in space and it like turns his head and waves at the camera?
Mhm.
And I don't know how many astronauts have even came forward and said you can't turn your head in those suits.
Yeah. Not okay. When they did one of the first spacewalks, do you remember that black and white footage?
I'm I'm sure I've seen it. I'm sure I
Dude,
have.
it is the cheesiest fucking bullshit.
Let's see if I can
You
find
would
it.
look at that and go, this looks like something out of a 1950s space movie where like the brain with the evil eyebrows is flying at, the professor and he's trying to hit it with an axe to keep it away. Like the guy literally he's like pulling and, trying to tether himself with this. It looks like basically a vacuum tube.
Let's see.
And
Can you
the
still
stars.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, brother.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah, and the stars in the background are ludicrous because you can tell they are part of a flat,
Right.
right?
Uh-huh.
And but then speaking about stars in the background, when the astronauts from the first moon mission were talking about the stars in the background, they were like, "Oh yeah, there's no stars up there," and it's like, wait a second, how the fuck can you not see pinpoints of light with no atmosphere blocking you? Because if your
Right.
back is to the sun, which is the light that is supposed to be hitting you, you should be
Mhm.
able to see everything.
Right.
Everything. And they
Yeah.
tried to tell us, no, we couldn't see the stars up there.
So it is. It's very cheesy, man.
It's very,
So
I mean, it's
cheesy.
just ridiculous.
It
But
is.
this is the point I was getting to with the Mars thing. Yeah, look, that's
I'll put it
flying.
back.
Stupid. Come on. Anyway, but if you want to get to some because this is why I thought the flat Earth thing was a little bit appropriate to talk about,
Mhm.
because flat earthers believe in this thing called the firmament. Now, if you look back at older maps, all right, and we're talking about stuff that mentions Tartaria and all these other things,
Mhm.
there was a firmament, all right, speaks about it in the Bible. It's this dome, all right,
Mhm.
that covers the earth, all right. Now, there are those that say it's made of water, and they will tell you that if you look through telescopes into space, it's all jumbled, right? That like you're looking at something below the surface of a swimming pool. All right.
Okay.
And I believe it's the if it's a Nikon 9900 that they banned the sale on, that was getting really good pictures of this shit, but all of a sudden they're not selling the damn thing anymore.
Right.
But this firmament they can't get through, and if you look at the space launches now, they're saying that it's tracking with the curvature of the Earth, but it's like these rockets are going straight up. Instead of just punching through straight into
Mhm.
space, every time,
The
just
angles.
like that,
Yeah. Hmm.
and every single time.
Yeah.
And their excuse is, well, it's going with the curvature of the Earth. Why? Like
Right.
what in the explanation of father physics? Why does it have to go with the curvature of the Earth? Okay.
Right.
And why is it that we have multiple videos of people sending rockets into the air, and then all of a sudden it's like they slam into something and have stopped, or they slam into it and then and the camera just
Right.
starts going nuts and the thing starts spinning and falling back to Earth.
Right.
Okay. You know, I'm not saying there is a firmament, but you know, that's one of the things that makes this "we're going to Mars" thing and "we've gone to Mars" thing sound like a bunch of bullshit.
Hmm.
Um, Also, the Van Allen belt.
All the asteroids.
No, 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 no. This is the. If you look at the Earth and we're able to see like with our eyes, because our eyes are human eyes suck, dude.
Yes, we do.
We
They do.
Yeah, there's so many like spectrums and things that we cannot see, right?
Right.
Um, God willing that we would have the eyes of a mantis shrimp. There's so much about this world that I think we'd be able to see auras and everything else. But if we could see radiation, all right, there you go. There you go. The big fucking donut.
Hmm.
They have stated unequivocally time and time again, and even the astronauts have slipped up and said, yeah, there's no way to get through that radiation belt without getting fried to a fucking crisp.
Right. I mean, come on. We don't even
That's
have the technology to get to the bottom of the ocean.
no, well, that's so they say. That's another blurred lines where we can get into
Yeah. Yes.
the other space exploration, because they talked about getting to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and running into these like black liquid pools
Yes.
on the
Yep.
bottom. You heard about
Have you
this,
seen
and where
the
they
have you seen the Meg?
I
That's an idea.
yes, I have,
There's an
right.
idea. There's a concept like that. I mean, in the Meg, it's more of like a cloudy fog that you have to punch through. But
Yes.
yes, same concept.
Okay, so well, supposedly
Hmm.
an explorer went down there with a sub, punched through, came up on the other side, and it's like this. They're looking around, and it's like, whoa, that was a portal. It didn't go deeper. It was like it went through, and then it was like whoop,
Came somewhere else.
yeah, and there's somewhere else in a brand new. Oh, that was creepy. Sorry, my dog is itching their back, and it sounds like somebody's beating on the door.
Yeah,
He's
I can
getting
hear
ready
it.
to grab the baseball bat. Anyway, but no, popped out on the other side in this totally different reality, right?
Right. Mhm.
But that's also the assertion of like what happened with Admiral Byrd when he took his wing of planes down there, to Antarctica, because he heard that there was a portal to the center of the Earth and wanted to explore. Went
Mhm.
down there and supposedly found lush tropical areas, and all this stuff, and far too much to get into in one podcast.
Yep.
But goes down there, finds that stuff out, and just not that long after, boy, all of a sudden we signed this massive treaty where the entire planet agrees that nobody explores the Antarctic. Nobody goes down there. Somehow we all agree
Right.
on that.
Uh-huh.
Even the Arabic countries where they're like, we hate the Jewish people. Israelis are like, we hate the Arabic people, but this we can agree on. Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
Doesn't make sense, man.
No, it doesn't. But that's the thing. Like, there is a preponderance of evidence if you will just put down like you talk about the
Mhm.
things that we are told and that we
Mhm.
find out are absolute bullshit. Just like the fact, we won the Vietnam War.
I don't know.
No, we did, and I will tell you how.
Okay.
Because in 1968, All right. Now, folks, this has nothing to do with Mars. This is an
Yes. We've
example
got off
of
topic here.
how
It's all
we
good.
have, this is an example how we have been lied to
Uh-huh.
over the years.
Uh-huh.
I remember being told we got our asses kicked in Vietnam, right? And we had to pull out, and all this other stuff. Now, it is very true that we had a lot of problems fighting over there because our own stinking, stupid government had all these restrictions of war that were keeping us from just tearing the shit out of these people, right? In
Right.
Vietnam. Or, I'm sorry, Korea. No, yeah, it was Korea. Sorry, Korea.
Okay.
And when we finally unleashed, or no, it was Vietnam because Korea was in the 50s. It was Vietnam. So, and we were kicking ass. We actually never lost any major battles. We lost a few skirmishes here and there, but the overwhelming win-loss ratio was very much on the side of the Americans, even with the restrictions that we had on us. And in 68, Walter Cronkite, who was, at one time was called the most trusted man in America. He was actually a son of a bitch. Cronkite was the fucking devil. Went on television and said, this is an unwinnable war. Well, guess who was listening? All of the communist countries that were involved in helping Vietnamese, right? So then they fought on because they got this new rush of, like, hey, we can win this PR campaign. Well, when the Tet Offensive happened in 72, it was a massive disaster, massive fucking disaster. All right.
Right.
Like when it was over a couple of days, it was not successful. It was terrible. And then our USAF, the Air Force, came in and they were given like, just go in, beat the shit out of them. They bombed their roads. They bombed their supply channels. All of the stuff that you would need to win a war.
Right.
And so finally in 73, a month after this happened, we go sign the Paris peace accords with them. And guess who agreed to every single thing that we asked for when we sat down to sign that treaty? They did. They agreed to everything across the fucking board.
Right.
And I've heard people come back and say, well, what about the fall of Saigon? That happened 2 years after we left. 2 years after we left. We didn't lose that.
Right.
And you can't tell me that whenever a treaty is signed to end a war and one side agrees to every fucking thing that you ask for, that's the winning side? No, sir.
Mm-hmm.
We were lied to. And if you guys question, look it up.
Well, and another good example, and this is very comical in a sense, but could be its own episode. War of the Worlds. Have you heard the story about the actual release of it, and just how insane everybody went? So when War of the Worlds was first released, it was a radio broadcast, and it was meant to kind of be off the wall and make people think that it was real, but all of it was faked. It was a book this dude or a script this dude wrote, and he was airing it on a radio broadcast, and people around the world went nuts. Riots broke out. People thought that we were dead.
Yeah.
But all because they were just listening to a radio broadcast. So it just shows you how easily we were manipulated.
Oh, absolutely, man. And the thing was, it got so crazy, and I'm sure you heard of this, but that farmer that saw the water tower, old wooden water tower, and took shots at the damn thing, right? Put bullets into it because they thought it was a massive alien walking through.
Yeah, man. That's actually would be a wonderful episode to kind of break down, just to kind of give you an idea of the human's mentality, man. We're so easily manipulated. And I think that if we think we're not, then you're just an idiot. You are.
Oh, my friend, I've got the perfect example for you. Oh, man. What is the most important meal of the day that you've been told?
You've been told breakfast. I was always told breakfast.
Breakfast. That's right. Guess what? Load of fucking bullshit. It was a propaganda movement because back in the 20s and 30s and 40s, there were these folks that had things that they wanted to sell. orange juice, bacon, sausage, breakfast meats, all of that stuff that you would eat at breakfast time. But humans didn't typically eat breakfast a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in America. So the folks that owned, the companies that sold these things hired a person who the guy was a whiz with propaganda. So came up with this breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and then got a food pyramid to back it up,
Mm-hmm.
got the USDA and people to back it up from the government, got doctors to come on to the advertising, just like, 4 out of every 5 doctors smoke Camel cigarettes because they're filtered,
Yep.
right? Same
Uh,
thing back then.
oh, Joe
Okay.
Camel, we miss you so much.
Right. But here's what's fucked up. That campaign started all the way back. If it say it was 1924 that it started, that was
Mm-hmm.
100 years ago. 100 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I teach at 2 different colleges, and I use this same example with my classes because the thing I teach them in my English classes is that it's a war of communication, and you need to take the power back from the powers that be so you can know when you're being propagandized, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I ask these kids that are 18 to 22 on their average demographic spread, and I
Mm-hmm.
say, what's the most important meal of the day? And to a person, every class, they say breakfast. And then I tell them the story about how that came about. And the look on their face is like, oh my God, are you serious? I go, dude, this was something that was started 100 years ago, and you're still buying into it. It has been passed down generation to generation to generation. The lie has continued.
I don't even really do breakfast very often. Mostly because I'll be on the shitter 20 minutes later. So I just don't do it.
And
I
like,
can't wake up and
coffee's
eat,
like
man.
the best food.
I'll be fine with coffee. But no, yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's just these are perfect examples of yeah, I mean people just it's easy to manipulate us. Give me a ball, say it's whatever, and I'm probably gonna believe
Mhm.
it, right? Like it's
Right.
if every year you're going to school, here's the globe. Every year here's the you go to school, here's the globe, and like it's drilled throughout your growth as a youth. And I think that there's a lot of things that are drilled into our brain, especially in a public schooling, and even more so in a private one too. But like
Mhm.
we're all manipulated and warped into what we're supposed to be, or what
Oh,
what exists.
well, and it's on the simplest levels too. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, okay, school is a fantastic example of indoctrination through
Mm-hmm.
repetition, right?
Yep.
But you remember those drop down maps that the teacher would pull down? Oh, it's time for geography.
Mm-hmm.
The teachers reached up and pulled down the world map.
Yep.
So they pull it down, and we've got this map in front of us. Now, sometimes it's just a flat map that has all the continents on it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a globe map with the continents kind of, spread on the curves to show where it's at. None of those maps are accurate. If you look at how the land is actually, if we're going even, let's say the globe Earth actually exists, even with the globe Earth theory, those maps are incorrect. Germany is like up here, and like Rhode Island is down here, but on the map it shows it like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where it's level. And you'll also see like, Iceland is like this tiny little land thing up here. But then you take those where the maps where they show Iceland, they're like, well, compared to the actual size of the United States of America, and then they put the outline over our continent, and it's like, holy shit, that thing's massive.
Right.
So we don't even have our proportions correct. We don't even know exactly where these land masses actually are in relation to where we're at. We don't
Yeah.
know a fucking thing about where we live.
Yep. My one of my well, somebody I managed with work, and he was talking to me because I heard he was a flat earther, and we started
Mm.
talking. He's like, I don't necessarily think the Earth is flat, but I think it's not what we're told it is. And he said, if you look at a globe, you'll see that most of the dominant powers in the world are closest to the equator. And it's true. There's a lot of things that he said that did make sense. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just like the reading the Bible and stuff like that. It's like someone did that and showed you that. So how real is it?
Yeah, it's well, and there are other things that you can look at that just move so far away from what is logical and reasonable, that when you really look at the time frames of things, and I'll get to what I'm talking about here, you're just like, nah, this is bullshit. And
Right.
all of this that we're talking about is to underpin the fact that people saying we are flying to Mars. It's like, motherfucker, you don't even know where Germany is in relation to the state of New York on a map.
Right.
Don't tell me that you're like, oh yes, we've been there multiple times. Shut up.
All we got to do is throw some shit in a rocket and send it up there, and then we'll send some people.
Oh
It's
yeah,
pretty easy, actually.
absolutely. Yeah, get right through the Van Allen. But you know what? Just put the astronaut in there naked. You know what? They need some tinfoil that'll protect them. Which, if you look at the original suits that the astronauts wore when they were going in outer space, they had a thin foil layer in between that protected them.
See,
Anyway,
here's my
so
biggest. Go finish your thing, and then we'll start to get into the other stuff.
well, okay. So let's talk about Chicago. All right. So
Mhm.
we've been on Blurred Lines before, and we talked about Tartaria
Mhm.
and that empire and the mud floods and things.
Yep.
If you look at the population of this country and when Chicago was founded, and that when it originally was, started to become a hub of trade and things, let's say like 1846, right?
Mhm.
Let's use that as the pin date. It was, I mean, there were buildings, there were roads, there were things, but it was all very kind of wild westy looking. We were still, getting into the industrial revolution and things like that were happening, but it was sparse, right? But
Right.
we're supposed to believe that in a matter of a few decades that the population explosion was so great and there were enough grown men and architects and everything else that by the time we got to the World's Fair and everything, these massive structures were created and all of this urban sprawl just popped up in a few years. And that limited population with limited resources and everything else was able to create all of that in that short amount of
Right.
time.
The
Like,
stuff that was brought to light of existence during the World Fair too, is kind of mind-boggling too. Yeah, there's a lot of things that the fluorescent light bulb was apparently invented or released during the World Fair.
yeah,
Just that we use every day. There's a lot of things, which is why we've talked about in the beginning about doing the H. Holmes show, because I think it's going to be a lot of learning, a lot of knowledge to absorb and to kind
mhm.
of dive into for that one. So yes, I agree.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I tell you one, dude, when people either listen to this or they watch it, I hope that people watch that one, because
Hmm.
I know you're one to get a lot of graphs and pictures and things
Hmm.
like that that you put into
Yes,
these casts, which always make it better.
yes,
When they see the complexity of what this guy, because if you saw the Johnny Depp movie where he was the barber that was killing people, what was the name
yes.
of that
Sweeney
movie?
Todd, Sweeney
Sweeney
Todd.
Todd. So take that chair where they slashed the throat, stepped on the
Mm,
lever, the chair went flat, slid into the basement.
yep.
Take that times 100 and make it 100 times more complex. He had
Mm,
rooms that where you would go into the room and the door would lock behind you and seal you in the room airtight. And
mm,
there were jets coming through the ceiling
mm,
and it would put gas into the room and kill you,
yep.
right? There were slides, like chutes and ladders going from here to there to the basement and this way and that way, and hidden staircases. And it was insane what this guy did.
He
I,
put
I mean,
levers underneath staircases to trigger alarms so that he knew where people were. Like that's how
yes,
crazy this guy was.
it
Dude,
created
it's
like a
nuts.
mad genius. I mean, you talk about somebody that, if you're talking about like a super villain arc, where if we had superheroes to fight somebody, this guy would be like the evil genius.
And he did
Right.
it, and and this is how he made money too. Like he utilized these people to collect their life insurance policies.
Yes.
It's just he would sell their corpse. Oh my god, he'd sell the corpses to doctors' offices because back then they actually had real skeletons in doctors' offices. It's absurd the stuff that he did, and the way he made his money was all scam. He didn't work a fucking day in his life. He worked people. That's literally what he did. It's crazy. This thing, I mean, this you're talking about easily probably a 3 or 4 part show. There's a lot to dive into.
Agreed. I totally agree, man. And it's, it's crazy how like guys like him, Ted Bundy, and the others, that they go off their charisma, or as the young people say, the Riz, right?
Right.
They get so much accomplished just by being able to pull the wool over people's eyes. And again, this going back to the population, with a little bit of smoke and mirrors, big words, charisma, you can trick people into almost anything, all the way to their doom. Right?
Yep.
How crazy is that? And they'll gladly follow you too. That's the messed up thing. It's just like, and not to get too political, but a lot of folks that voted, for Miss Harris, they started saying this is the best economy that the United States has seen in decades. I'm a numbers guy. I'm middle of the road. I'm a numbers dude. And this is literally one of the worst economies by the numbers that we have seen in as by numbers, he's the worst president we've had in U.S. history. Like this administration was. This isn't a Democrat. This isn't Republicans. This is literally the numbers, 100%, right? But because there was so much propaganda going out there, and people, if you tell a lie enough, it becomes the truth in their minds, because they work on something called cognitive dissonance, which is this need to make this thing you believe true, so much so that your brain will believe whatever it has to make it true. Right? The Bears are the best team in football. Bro, they're like 0-5,000. Don't care. Ditka. Okay. Sure.
I followed Charlie Kirk on TikTok.
Yeah. Very smart guy.
He's very intelligent, and I think one thing that he does that a lot of people don't do is he gives the other side the opportunity to speak before he crushes them.
it is a dismantling that man does, and it's always,
and he does it respectfully too. Like he's not even a dick about it.
Right. No, he's great. I've only seen him snap one time, and it was justifiable because it was this one guy who was always coming at him and just the rudest person. And Charlie finally was just like, "You." I've only seen that happen one time. And the thing is, he's where I think he's incredibly smart with his work is that he's doing it on college campuses where some of the most vitriolic, very left-leaning, indoctrinated, and I can say this because, bro, that's, if I'm not doing stand-up, I'm teaching at colleges. Yeah. All right. And as I said, I'm in the middle of my doctorate. I'm in the middle of the indoctrination. I see it every fucking day. I hear the words and conversations the kids are having, and it is very woke. It's very gross, right? Yeah. But he gets in the middle of that and challenges them to, okay, so what idea is it that you really support? And you always see him go, racism, bigotry, Zionist. It's just like they just start kicking out the catchphrases. Yeah. Because those are supposed to be the argument enders. But the beautiful thing is people are starting to go, you know what? That's not good enough anymore, dude. It's just not.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so we're 55 minutes in. We've talked about every conspiracy under the sun, from the Vietnam War being a win to, hot dogs having a percentage of rat shit in them. I think
Oh,
that
it's
came
called
up.
diving, man. I think we just dive. That's what we do.
But I know you want to talk a bit about the audio feature. You know,
Yes.
this idea that you have. So please,
Mm.
expound on that if you would.
I think this has been a great episode. First off, I don't really necessarily. I feel like this last bit that we're going to talk about, I could easily just clip and make its own thing. But so the idea behind this was that I was listening to a podcast about Elon Musk and what he wanted to do with Mars. So I started to look about colonizing Mars, and I was like, okay, let's start diving into this. And there's a lot of things between Elon Musk, who we all know is SpaceX CEO. Uh, we also have Baz Landstrup, who is a Dutch engineer, who is the CEO of Mars One. So that's their version of us, SpaceX, basically. And they both want to
Okay.
colonize Mars. They have some differences, but most of it's pretty similar. The idea is that they said it's like a 80-day trip to get there, and that radio transmission it's ridiculous. And a lot of this is when you start researching into it, you hear numbers all over the place. That's partial. That could be part of the conspiracy concept that we talk about too. Is nobody really fucking knows. But anyways,
Right.
so these are all one-way trips to colonize Mars, and we can send it at 100 people at a time. And there's reported water on Mars, so you see the ice caps on the north and the south of Mars. The idea is that they could actually mine the water, break the water up, the ice up, and thaw it out and create water. Apparently, there's possibly water underneath Mars that we could drill and get. Is that real? I don't know. If you think about how thin the atmosphere is, though. At night, they talk about it getting like negative 200 and some degrees Fahrenheit. Negative 200 and some degrees. It's absurd. And then during the day at max, it hits like 70. It's further away than we are. So, and it can't really retain the heat. So vast temperature changes, dust storms, wind storms, just an absurd amount of just weather issues alone to colonize it. They also talk about how the first few hundred, the chances of surviving are very slim to none. And I was thinking, okay, how funny would it be if instead of, picking the best of the best to go there, if they just did a random selection to see how they'd survive? So that's kind of where I came up with the idea of this audiobook series of cherry picked, which if anybody know what that metaphor is random selection. And each episode will be a random group of guys sitting around a table discussing events that have happened over the past week. And some of it'll be dramatic, some of it'll be comical, but the fact that most of this is none of this is for sure that we've even made it. So we can be as off the wall as we want, creative as we want, and create an experience that is funny and hopefully just gets everybody involved and kind of build our own colony in a sense through a TV series, but you're listening to it.
That I really like that idea, but I'll tell you the thing too that I like the idea of is that the unmitigated hubris that goes along with the fact that you're going to this place and it is a suicide mission because oxygen can't just be willy-nilly replenished up there, right? Unless they somehow figure out how to plant trees, create a biodome situation, and somehow figure that out that way, right? So there's that. So then the question, it begs the question, why would you go?
Well,
Knowing that
and if yeah, exactly. So first off, would you do it? No, I wouldn't fucking do it. Elon Musk talks about wanting to die there. Okay, cool, by all means. But think about taking the shittiest $10 tent that you could get at Walmart and flying to a planet that is extremely dangerous and then popping up a tent and saying, okay, I live here now. That's basically what they're talking about. These massive inflatable homes. And then they're going to basically send shipments of stuff there to build a dome. Like it would be up to the people to build it.
Okay, so essentially they're turning it into the streets of San Francisco. And so we're going to start seeing through the telescopes like these maps of like, oh, well, a human shit there and a human shit there. And there's some more human shit. I'd avoid that part of Mars.
Right.
The homeless encampment's growing somehow.
I think there's a lot of ways that this could go. You think, yeah, I mean, for those of you that have seen Friends, like the coffee shop scenes where they're all sitting around just bullshitting. So you're going to get that kind of a vibe. But the way we're going to set this up is it's going to take about a month to release the episode. But what we're going to do is we're going to do actual dramatized events halfway through each month of the next episode. So it'll be more of a scene being created rather than people sitting around a table talking. So it'll be
Right.
like a sneak peek of the show to come. And the reason that I say a month is because there's so many aspects that you can throw into this. So when you get 4 or 5 people basically doing what me and you are doing, except there's not going to be video. We're all going to be like hiding on the side of the trying to get that clear quality audio, and then probably pausing between discussing, hey, do we need to retake that? It's like going to a movie shoot, but it's an audio. I mean, it's watching a TV series that you're listening to on Spotify. You know,
Interesting. I mean, just from my perspective, I think it's going to be cool, man.
yeah, and I think I've had a lot of audience and actors and celebrities on recently. William Oldfield apparently liked some of my videos. But I think I've had actors, I've had film directors that I've pitched this to, and I'm actually thinking about pitching this idea to a few people that have some connections and seeing if I can't really get this thing blown up, because I think it has good potential. An audio series it's a big thing now because there's not many of them, but they do exist. And I've listened to a few of them and looked at some reviews on some of them, and people really get into this stuff because it's like, you know, D&D. I was never a big D&D fan, but you get those people who start creating something and they just keep building on it, and that's what we're doing here. So
I was D&D nerd through and through, man. I love that stuff. Oh, excuse me.
yeah, so that's kind of where we're going with it, man. And the hardest part's going to be getting that clear quality audio. So in order to have a guest on, it would have to be somebody that has a mic, because I don't want to take away the quality aspect, especially for the listeners. On what we do here, I mean, we both have very clear audio, but we get guests on sometimes that are using their phone, they get tinny. It's just, I don't want that to be a factor in this series.
Right. Absolutely. No, especially if it's something that's being slated for audio, because that's a sure way to rip somebody out of the suspension of disbelief. You know what I mean?
Right. I do want to mention something that we were talking about, with conspiracies and stuff. Taught CERN and all these people that are messing with like the colliders and stuff and opening portals. Let's say that Mars was reachable, but not from us flying there. Like, could we teleport there? Have we figured out ways to create these teleportation devices to get to these places? I could see with the advancement of technology now, the possibility of doing that, but not letting us know it. So I think there are factors that we could throw into this from the conspiracy side of things that could also add that, just, I don't know, craziness.
Right. And it would be a worthwhile thing to look into, that teleportation thing, because, they say art imitates life, but there's also the conspiracy theory that when there are people doing evil in the world to avoid the karmic justice that would be upon them, they show us through programming, television, movies, books, whatever, songs, that they're doing these things, and then they're karmically absolved because they're like, hey, we told you we were doing it. You didn't do anything. It's like, but it was in a movie. We told you. And I bring that up because of the TV show and the movie Stargate. If you go over to Egypt, where a lot of this technology was discussed and talked about, you can look in the ruins and you can see many potential stargates that were
Yep.
there. If you look at the hieroglyphics and the construction and things, I mean, the damn pyramid at Giza was just a gigantic battery, essentially. You
Mayans,
know,
the Mayans, and a whole nother, yeah, not even on the same continent. And
yeah.
they have sculptures and statues of things that we don't see today. You know, um,
Well,
it's insane, man. There's some prehistoric civilizations that existed before us that were hidden, um, to kind of make us feel like we're the most intelligent thing now, or that we, being the government, is the most intelligent to listen to, because we hid
mhm.
all the rest of the shit for you to not find. So, which is part of that Tataria episode that we did.
Well,
But yeah, I
Tatari and
mean,
the Eye of the Sahara,
mhm,
which they're saying was Atlantis, which
mhm.
was
Oh,
vastly more advanced technologically than we have hoped to achieve. And literally, that we're just yet another iteration of humans reaching a peak and then there's a reset,
right.
and there's supposedly been multiples, but
Yep.
that's neither here nor there. All right, we're going on an hour and 7 minutes, and we talked about cherry picked, which I think is going to be awesome. Looking forward to that.
Thank you.
So, folks, stay tuned for that. I already mentioned the sponsors. All right, they got enough play. Um, Thanks again, Jukebox.
Thank
For
you.
being on here and talking about all this stuff. Do you have any final thoughts as we're closing out here?
No, we did what we do when we do blurred lines, man. So we talk about things for people to open their eyes to. So I think honestly, I didn't know where this. I didn't expect the episode to go the way it did. So I'm glad it did, though. It was fun, man. This is a good episode.
That was fun. All right. So for Jukebox, I'm Sean Shank.
No,
Tune into the next Blurred Lines where we'll talk about more of this stuff. And remember, question everything. And I absolutely believe all the bullshit that we talked about.
yeah. We'll see you later, guys.